Hi everyone, welcome back to our podcast. I'm Paola.
And I'm Danielle.
We hope you're doing well. We took a little break last week, but we're back. And today we're talking about the 2009 horror movie Jennifer's Body, which has been, the topic of conversation recently online. Is it good? Is it not good? Today we're gonna get into it. So as always, we do have to warn you, there will be lots of spoilers. How many spoilers, Danielle?
All of them.
All of them. All of the spoilers. If you haven't seen this movie, what are you doing here? Just kidding. You can stay. But just know that it's going to get spoiled. Like a lot. Here is the plot synopsis for Jennifer's Body. Anita Needy Lesnicki, once an insecure and studious teenager living near Devil's Kettle, Minnesota, is now a violent mental inmate who narrates the story as a flashback while in solitary confinement. Since childhood, she had been friends with Jennifer Check, a popular cheerleader, despite having little in common. One night, Jennifer takes Needy to a local dive bar to attend a concert by an indie rock band, Low Shoulder. A suspicious fire engulfs the bar, killing several people. In shock, Jennifer agrees to leave with the band, despite Needy's protests. Later that evening, Jennifer, covered in blood, appears in Needy's kitchen and attempts to eat food from the refrigerator. She immediately vomits a trail of black spiny fluid and leaves in a hurry. Meanwhile, the members of Low Shoulder gain popularity due to their falsely rumored heroism during the fire and offer to make a charity appearance at the school's spring formal. A month later, Jennifer appears sick and listless. She accepts a date with school alternative/emo Colin, whom she brutally kills. While Needy and her boyfriend Chip have sex, Needy senses something dreadful has happened. She leaves in a panic and almost runs over Jennifer, who is drenched in blood. At home, she again encounters Jennifer, who explains that Low Shoulder had taken her into the woods after the bar fire and offered her as a virgin sacrifice to Satan in exchange for fame and fortune. Although the sacrifice and demonic exchange were a success, Jennifer was not actually a virgin, so she became permanently possessed. Leaving the woods, Jennifer had encountered an exchange student leaving the scene of the fire and made him her first victim. Jennifer states that when she has eaten, she can withstand virtually any injury without pain, healing instantly. The following day, Needy goes to the school library's occult section and determines that Jennifer is a succubus, who must feed on flesh and can only be killed while she is hungry and weak. Needy tells Chip about her discoveries about Jennifer and warns him not to attend the school dance. He does not believe her, so she breaks up with him in order to protect him. Chip decides to attend the dance anyway, but is intercepted by Jennifer, who takes him to an abandoned pool house and begins feeding on him. Needy arrives there and fights Jennifer. Chip impales Jennifer through the stomach with a pool skimmer, but Jennifer removes it and escapes, while Chip dies. Needy goes to Jennifer's home and breaks into her bedroom. She fights Jennifer and stabs her in the heart with a utility knife, killing her and destroying the demon. Jennifer's mother enters and finds Needy on top of her daughter's body. Soon after, Needy is brought to an asylum. In her asylum room, she manifests some of Jennifer's supernatural powers, such as super strength and the ability to levitate, due to a non-fatal bite from Jennifer during the fight between them. She escapes the mental facility, hitchhikes a ride to the hotel where Low Shoulder are staying, and murders them. Kind of start off the discussion, I wanted to talk about an article that we found on BuzzFeed. I believe it's called Why You Owe Jennifer's Body an Apology. It's an article from 2018. I'll link it in the description, but basically it talks about like why Jennifer's Body was kind of such an underrated movie when it came out and why it did so poorly, even though there's kind of been this like resurgence online about people discussing the movie and talking about how it has certain themes that are more timely and just we're better to like we're able to understand them better than we were in 2009 when the movie came out. So I'm curious to know too, this isn't planned, but I'm curious to know if you have any memory of when the movie came out and like seeing a trailer for it, or what in general, like when you had heard about that movie, like what was your perception of maybe like what it was about before you watched it, obviously.
Yeah. Let's see. In 2009, I think I was 11 or 12.
Whoa. Okay.
I'm pretty sure, right? Because
Yeah. Well, I was 2009. I was 15. Yeah. So you must have been
12.
Yeah, 12. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was 12. I don't think I remember seeing any, like, what do you call those, trailers or anything, because we didn't have TV at that time, and I didn't have internet or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I don't remember any trailers, but I remember watching part of the movie, like the end part of it, when it was on TV at my cousin's house when I was a little bit older. Probably like when I was like, I don't know, I would guess maybe like a 2 years, or maybe I don't know how long it takes for a movie that like flopped to get onto like TV.
But I guess it depends.
Like
But
I don't know. I feel like a year or two is probably
reasonable.
Because I remember being still young, like probably like late middle school, early high school. And I remember thinking, just seeing the end of it, that it was interesting. But I don't remember a lot of it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I didn't have a lot of... for some reason, I think that I thought that the movie was good.
Yeah.
But I don't remember, like, why I thought it was good. I think that maybe I had heard other people saying that they thought it was good. Maybe not, though, because a lot of people didn't like it back then.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But when we came into this movie, I remember telling you, oh, yeah, I think this movie was good.
Yeah.
And then we watched it, and so we got to see
for ourselves if it was actually good or not. So I don't think I remember, or maybe I vaguely remember in 2009 when it came out, but I never saw it, and I think I must have seen the trailer maybe like once, maybe twice, but it was just like, it wasn't really in my, I don't know, I wasn't really aware of it all that much. I think I remember having, though, a DVD that I bought that had the trailer for Jennifer's Body obviously before the movie played. And so then I kept seeing the trailer for Jennifer's Body, and I was like, what is this movie about? Like, it seems like, semi-horror, but like, like, just really sexual, and like about Megan Fox's character, Jennifer, and like, maybe her having a relationship with her friend, who is needy, and I mean, she's not needy, like her character's name is Needy.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of confused about what it was about, and I also didn't really know that it flopped so hard. I think I had heard that it was just kind of like a whatever movie. I definitely didn't hear any praise from anyone. It was just, for me, it kind of flew under the radar, which is really interesting, because I think at the time it came out, it was definitely aimed at like my demographic, It was supposed to be like a teenage movie for teenagers. I was like 15, almost 16, so I'm very surprised that it kind of just flew under the radar for me. But yeah, it just kind of was, not a thing for, I hadn't heard of it, hadn't really heard friends talk about it or anything like that. So it wasn't until recently that I saw people talking about it online, and then I was like, oh yeah, that movie, and then I kind of like looked more into it, and then now we're talking about it today. So kind of going back to the article, they talked a lot about the fact that, like we mentioned before, that this movie wasn't very well received in the box office. It did very poorly, and even now it still has like a 45% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's like 45 audience, and then like even lower for critics. It's pretty bad.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty rough. So in the article, the writer interviews the director and the writer of the movie. The director's name is Karen Kusama, and the writer's name is Diablo Cody. So Diablo was known for Juno. She had written the movie Juno, and that did really well. And it was also like in the same like teenage like vein of like, sarcasm, and I think her style as a screenwriter is very unique, and you can kind of see it in both movies. But anyway, she had just finished doing Juno, I think. And so because Juno did so well, they kind of gave her free reign as to what, or maybe she felt, because her reputation was, at a high, she felt that she could kind of jump onto any project that she wanted to, and maybe it would work out the same for her. So they talk a lot about that in the article. They also talk about the ad campaign for this movie, and the fact that it was kind of botched. That's the impression that I got, was that it was really like targeted towards like teen boys, because they really, took like the idea of like Jennifer's body and like Megan Fox being hot and like really ran with it before they really knew what the movie was going to be about. And so that's another thing too that I didn't know, that apparently they ran all these ads for the movie, kind of portraying it as like, a sexual movie or something that, that young teenage boys would want to watch because it's got a hot girl in it, basically. But it didn't really portray any of the like actual story of what happens in the movie. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and people were like super pissed that they thought they were coming into one movie because of the trailer, and then they left, with a different movie than what they were signing up for, and that led to like a lot of the really bad reviews and stuff. Because those people might not have went to go see it had they not have been like kind of pulled in by the bad marketing
I guess in a sense it's like bad for the, like, it's bad marketing because it's poorly portraying the movie, but it's also good in the sense that it might have gotten more people to go see it. It's just the fact that it was misleading, So that is one thing. So that's one thing that they talk about in the article. So apparently Cody and Kusama had wanted to make a movie that was more aimed at teenage girls and like exploring their friendships. But like we said, the marketing ended up just trying to appeal to like a teen male audience by being like super overtly sexual. And I noted a quote from Kusama where she said, "From the outset, I always felt like this is a horror movie about toxic friendships between girls. And on a larger scale, it's about how these alliances between girls get distorted and corrupted by the patriarchy." Which, like, now, I feel like there's a lot of discussion about it being ahead of its time. And I feel like that's definitely true. But it's just kind of funny how everything worked out, because now a movie with, like, similar themes to this wouldn't be so hard to understand, I feel like, or wouldn't be so hard to relate to. But at the time, I guess they were kind of just, thinking in a way that the general public wasn't thinking yet, So that's kind of interesting. That's kind of what it's interesting to know that that's what they set out to do, and then how it kind of all went south and ended up flopping, which really sucks for them.
Yeah.
So something else that they talked about in the article was that Diablo Cody, the writer, said that the movie wasn't really meant to be a horror comedy, which is kind of funny that that's how it turned out.
Yeah.
I think from the get-go you can kind of tell, like, she has a certain, like, comedic streak, and maybe she didn't mean for it to be like that, but that's how it ended up. The director, Kusama, said that she actually liked the way that Cody wrote in, like, kind of in a funnier style, and it reminded her of some of the horror movies that she liked that were maybe more comedic, like An American Werewolf. So, which is, like, I can totally see that. Like, once I read that in the article, I was like, oh yeah, because, like, An American Werewolf is it's not really scary, but it has scary-ish moments. But for the most part, it's really comedic. So, like, I can totally see why she, even though, like, Diablo Cody didn't mean for it to be scary or to be funny, I can see how, like, Kusama, like, came in and kind of put two and two together and said, like, oh, this is gonna be like An American Werewolf. You know what I mean? Like, it's gonna be funny and scary, and, like, I can see why she put those things together. And I think you can also see it a lot in the final product too, like how it kind of ended up, because it does have, like, really scary moments, and it also has really funny moments. So
Wow, I feel like a big light bulb just clicked in my head even just like the parallels between the two friends in both movies, that one is messing with the other, and like in that movie, in the American Werewolf in London, I thought that those two characters were like low-key, like kind of like queer-coded in a way, but I didn't like know how to bring it up, or if I was just like projecting onto it. But I don't know, I feel like that makes a lot of sense now.
So one of the last things they talked about in the article was the fact that the movie did so poorly, like money-wise too. They had a $16 million budget to make the movie, and the movie made $16 million. So like it barely broke even. You know what I mean?
Sad.
Which is horrible, because
at least it broke even. If it went negative, that'd be like even more of a
I feel like
devastating.
that's kind of unheard of. Even like the most low budget movies, I feel like for the most part at least break even. So, but this was like, you know, 16 million is a significant budget. It's not nothing. Obviously, there's different scales, but that's sad. It hardly made any money. So I can only imagine how like they felt after the movie came out, putting in like, I mean, it goes for any movie that fails, but it seems like it was more personal for them. Like the fact that they were like two women who were kind of breaking into the horror genre. I don't really think that, I know for a fact that Diablo Cody hadn't done anything in the genre before. I'm not too sure about Kusama. I think she might have had one horror movie before this one. But they're like two women breaking into the genre. They're kind of like taking a risk. And then it just like absolutely flopped. Didn't pay off. Like, I bet that must have felt horrible.
Yeah.
Lastly, the article talks about how both Cody and Kusama are obviously glad that the movie is now getting a little bit more recognition for being like ahead of its time. Also, they bring up the fact that the Me Too movement had something to do with that, because it kind of like brought forth all these conversations about like women and like the abuse of women and stuff like that, and that it kind of ended up working out that the themes of this movie are, you know, really directly dealing with that like female like trauma and abuse, and the way, like she said earlier, like the way in which like the patriarchy kind of affects the way that we associate with each other as women, you know. So I feel like it really made this movie like not easier to understand, but like the context of the conversations that we were having in 2018 because of the Me Too movement made it so that this movie was like more timely. And if it would have come out like at that time, it would have made, I think, a lot more sense, and it probably would have done a lot better too. Kind of like in the way that Get Out did really well, because it had like tons of social commentary, and it was funny, and it was scary, and it was like conversations that we were already having, you know, as just like a general audience, or like the public in general in the US. So it made a lot of sense for that movie to be out and to like be saying the things that it was saying, and it just makes a lot of sense as to like why it did well, you know.
I wanted to add that in the article too, they mentioned that they think some portion of why the movie might not have done as well also is at that point Michael Bay was kind of like dragging Megan Fox's like reputation through the dirt or mud, whatever, and that might have had something to do with it, that like people were like, I don't know if I want to see a film where she's the star.
Yeah.
Because, you know, everyone's saying that she's like
difficult to work with.
I found from another source that there was apparently Michael Bay has a website of his own, and supposedly, reportedly, 3 people from the crew, the stage crew people, for the Transformers movie, wrote this like really long, rude, terrible letter about Megan Fox, saying all of these like really mean things about her, saying that she was like dumb as a brick, that they said that she was a bitch. They just like were saying really, really shitty things, like, oh, I hope her character in Transformers 3 gets squished in the first 10 minutes.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
What did she do?
And he must have okayed it to go on his website.
Yeah.
So it's like he like signed off on, and apparently there was like 2 like sources that came forward that said that he had something to do with writing parts of it.
Yeah.
And like it's really bad.
Oh my goodness.
So he was like really going at like trying to ruin her career, and he was saying there was an interview that he did where he was saying about how like, oh yeah, I discover all these stars, and like, yeah, I bring them up into like the starlight, and then you know, by that logic it's kind of like saying that he can bring them up, but he can bring them
He can like destroy them too.
Yeah, that's what I saw that specific part from like a YouTuber.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Damn. It's kind of interesting too because I mean I don't want to get too much into like speculating about what might have happened, but maybe like Megan Fox had something on him, or you know what I mean, like maybe she knew something that he didn't want her to tell other people or release to the public or something, and so he like made it so that she had a really hard time in her career, which really sucks. And I think I honestly am not too familiar with the things that she has done in general, like what she's been in, other than New Girl, because she was in New Girl and I really like that show. And I thought, like, I didn't mind her as an actress. I didn't really think her character was all that, like, well thought out. But I thought as an actress, like, she was fine. And then I was wondering, like, how come I don't see Megan Fox in more things, you know? Because she's, like, she's good. She's a good actress. And she's obviously very pretty. So, like, you know, like, there's tons of parts for women who look like her. And so it seems like, you know, it'd be a shame to know that, like, you know, Michael Bay's efforts were, you know, were, like, successful, basically. But yeah, that's pretty brutal. I can't imagine what somebody could have done on set to, like, warrant such a strong response, you know?
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. The video that I had seen, they, like, mentioned, like, 2, you know, sections of it, but both those sections were, like, really, like,
gnarly
trash talking. It was bad. I was like, what the hell? And apparently supposedly Michael Bay and Megan Fox, like, sort of made up. And I guess he did those the live action Ninja Turtle movies, and she was in it.
Oh.
So he, like, brought her back, I guess, to work for that.
Yeah.
So I guess they're kind of all good now, sort of, or like they've like made up over that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like obviously there's a bigger conversation to be had about, like, certain male directors and even actors that are in certain positions of power that really allow them to take advantage of that power if they want to. I don't know if that's the case for Michael Bay. I don't know. I mean, it sounds like it was because, like you said, he kind of signed off on that letter and put it on his website, which he really didn't need to do. Like, if the crew had such an issue with her, I would imagine that it could have either, like, I guess, 1, been handled, like, legally, or 2, like, that could have just gone, like, straight to her so that she could then apologize and for whatever she did. But it just seems kind of crazy to do all of that to like try and I don't even know what his goal would have been other than to, like, damage her reputation, because, like, if you want an apology from her, that was not the way to go about it.
Yeah. From the way that the parts that I heard of the letter, it didn't even seem like the crew was saying she did anything to them.
Yeah.
It was just them defending Michael Bay and, like, down talking her, because I think the whole thing that started it was that she did an interview sometime during Transformers 2 or after Transformers 2 where she was explaining about how, like, he was really, like, a tyrant on set, and that he would give her really bad direction. Like, she'd be like, okay, what's my character's motivation, or, like, who am I supposed to be looking at when the scene is happening, and he would just tell her, like, oh, just be hot, just be sexy, and she's like, what kind of a direction is that? Like, I don't feel good when you talk to me like that.
See, that sounds more likely.
And then she said some other stuff about how he was, like, how when he was on set that he was like Hitler or something, which was, like, you know, not good wording.
Yeah.
But, you know, she was trying to get her point across that he's, like, really bad when they're on set. And then she said something about, like, yeah, when we're not on set, like, he's totally, like, chill or whatever. But then when we are on set, he's having us do, like, these crazy things. And he's saying these things to me. And, like, you know, and then after that, I think is when he, like, kind of was like, we're not on
so
good
that
terms.
definitely sounds like retaliation.
Yeah.
Like, given the context that she had kind of, like, spoken about her experience filming the movies and everything, it definitely does sound like he was trying to retaliate and he was trying to damage her reputation, like we said before. So that's pretty crazy. And I feel like, you know, I'm more inclined to believe women in these kind of situations, but especially given that there are so many clips out there, like either audio clips or videos or just like testimonies of like certain directors just going like apeshit over certain things on set, or like actors too. Like there's that very famous like I think it's just an audio clip of Tom Cruise like yelling, or maybe it wasn't Tom Cruise, it was some other male actor yelling on the set of some like high profile movie where he's just telling everybody off basically. So I'm like, those things happen, and not to say that any like women in film haven't had any sort of outbursts like that, but I feel like typically it's men, because they're the ones who are an advantage, they're the ones who are in power, they're the ones who have the privilege, especially in the film industry. So like, of course, you know, he would retaliate. Like, why wouldn't he? He probably feels like he's like well within his right, you know? But anyway, we kind of went on a tangent there, but I can see why, you know, Megan Fox would feel like the need to stand up for herself and stuff like that. And it kind of sucks that her career suffered because of it, but, you know, it just goes to show you, it goes to, like, further prove why, like, movies like these are important, and it's important that they're made, even if they're not perfect, you know? Okay, so now that we've talked about the article, let's get into discussing the movie. So, Danielle, what did you like about this movie?
I really liked the premise of the movie and the whole explanation for how Jennifer like became evil, got possessed, you know. That whole spiel.
Yeah.
That was really interesting. What are some things that you liked about the movie?
I will say the first thing that I noticed that I didn't like at first, but then I ended up liking, was the dialogue. I feel like that stood out to me immediately. And then I didn't know when we first started watching it that it was written by Diablo Cody. And then once that we got the credits at the end, I saw it was Diablo Cody, and I was like, oh my god, it all makes sense. But I will say that in the beginning I was like, this dialogue is too much. It's too cheesy. It's like, it's teen, like, slang / talk, but like in a really weird way, in a way that is almost like made up,
in a way that is like hi kids, hi fellow kids, because
how do you do, fellow kids?
Yeah, how do you do, fellow kids?
So anyway, let me get to my point.
Okay.
I thought it was horrible at first. I was like, eek. I think I even said, like, I feel like Megan Fox doesn't believe what she's saying, or like she doesn't like the dialogue that is coming out of her yapper. But the more that I watched it, and this is only in the things that I like, because I didn't dislike it after a while. The more that I watched it, it was like, I get it. I see it. I believe it. I believe that these characters are talking like this. Like, once I was able to kind of like let go of the way that I spoke when I was a teenager, or the way that, like, you know, I knew that other people spoke as teenagers, it was very like unique to this world. You know what I mean? Like, these teenagers would speak this way in this world, if that makes sense. So I feel like I was able to kind of enjoy it for its cheesiness, for its like campiness, for the fact that it was just so like, some things were just so out of left field and they were just kind of funny. I feel like it added that humor to the movie. It was like it wasn't in any means. I feel like as the movie progressed, I realized how much I should not be taking the dialogue like super seriously. Because I feel like in horror movies, we have a tendency to want to have like a specific kind of dialogue that is like expository, but also like realistic, because that realism really helps you like immerse yourself into the story and think like, oh, you know, what would I do if I was in that situation? But the more I just kind of like let go of those expectations, the more I got into the characters and like the story and why they were talking the way that they were talking. You know what I mean? It was almost like somebody created a world in which they used people that look like teenagers but weren't actually. It was kind of like Alien in a way that I enjoyed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I mean, yeah. I will say that I'm the opposite side of that fence.
Mm-hmm.
That
you didn't like it?
It didn't work for me.
I feel like it's definitely an acquired taste. And once I realized that it was Diablo Cody, it made more sense to me. And she is just, like I said earlier, she has a very unique style. I love Juno. That's like one of my favorite movies of all time. And in Juno, they also talk kind of funny. Like, they say things that are like sayings but aren't really sayings, but like in the world of Juno, like those are sayings, you know what I mean? And they don't make sense in reality, but they make sense in the world of the movie. So like once I kind of like put two and two together, I was like, oh, okay, it's not, it to me it read more like a stylistic choice rather than like really trying to appeal to like teenagers kind of thing, like how do you do fellow kids type of thing. I think there are how do you do fellow kids moments in the movie, and that is one of the things that I don't like, and I'll talk about it more later. But I think overall, like the style is very clear and it's very purposeful. You know, it's not like grasping at straws to try and appeal to a teenage audience. It just like is teenage in like a really alien way that doesn't make any sense, but makes sense for the universe of the movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I haven't seen Juno in a long time, but from what I remember, I really liked it. And going back to when I was younger, I remember people talking about Juno, but I don't remember people talking about Jennifer's Body.
Yeah.
So that kind of shows and they're both, you know, like have a female protagonist.
Yeah.
And like you said similar vibes in a way.
Yeah, I think the vibes are pretty much limited to this. What the fuck was that? Look at your window.
No.
Come on. It was probably just a bug or something. We'll get it on camera if it's something scary. I think the similarities between like Juno and this movie are pretty much limited to like the dialogue style and kind of like the way that the characters communicate with each other. This is laid on thicker though, I will say, because Juno has these kind of like eccentric like lines and like just ways in which they talk to each other, but it's not as like dramatic as it is in this movie. I feel like it's more dramatic in this movie.
Yeah, the characters in Juno are more like, I don't know what you'd say, like really dorky, like in a way like proto-hipster kids kind of. Whereas like these, I guess you could kind of say Needy as she could sort of fit into that, but like the words that they're using seem like they're trying to be words that like popular kids use, not like words that like eccentric, whatever you were saying, like that like nerdy hipstery kids would say. Yeah. So it came off different to me. I don't know. It was just like.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I will say that I think that like Diablo Cody's like style of writing is better suited for a movie like Juno. Not to say that she shouldn't do anything else, but I can see why it would bother you, like the way that this whole movie the way that the characters communicate in this movie, because it is laid on pretty thick. But I feel like because it was laid on so thick, I was able to just like
be like, oh yeah, whatever.
Yeah, like whatever. Like it's not a thing that bothers me. It's a thing that I like in the sense that it's like so obvious that it's supposed to be like tongue in cheek, like kind of funny, you know? It's not supposed to be like serious. Like I don't think either like the director or the writer expected a teenager to watch that and be like, this is how we talk, you know what I mean? Like it's like over exaggeration for the sake of like comedy.
Yeah. I like that also that in the end that Needy gets revenge for her friend.
Mm-hmm.
She had to, kill her friend to save her friend in a way.
Yeah.
And then she was able to go avenge her.
I thought that the horror and comedy were like kind of balanced in an interesting way. I think it kind of, I can see like in that aspect, I can definitely see the influence from like An American Werewolf in London, because sometimes, like, I think you had said when we were watching it that the like emotions were, that the like way that they were trying to control emotions in the audience would like sometimes be kind of jerky. Like it would be like you feel this way and then now all of a sudden you feel this way. So I am seeing like a very similar kind of technique in this movie, in a sense that in a way that I like, because it's like I don't know, it's a tricky balance, I think, like we had said before, like to do a horror movie, to do a comedy, to like try and blend both. But whenever I think back on this movie, I think of moments that are like funny and cheesy, and then I also think of moments that are very scary. So I feel like it does a good job of kind of like balancing the both of them. I don't know that it was like 100% successful, but I think like for my taste and kind of from what I like look for and what I look out in, especially once I had kind of given into the fact that this wasn't supposed to be a movie that was supposed to be like super like serious, I kind of admired more in the way that some things were meant to be like more funny and some things were meant to be like way scarier. So I feel like that was something that I like, kind of that balance of it. And it's funny to use the word balance because it's not really like smooth. It's like kind of very like jerky in the same way that An American Werewolf in London was, but it's purposeful. Like I feel like I'm able to, I use that word so much, but I feel like I'm able to kind of get into a movie with that has like aspects that I don't necessarily like in every movie, or that I sometimes critique of other movies, if it seems like it was done on purpose. Does that make sense? Like sometimes movies do stupid things and they don't make any sense, whether it's like a plot hole or like certain character that's not well developed enough. Like some of those things aren't done with purpose, but some things that could be portrayed as like negative and are done with more purpose, then I feel like they're more redeeming to me. I don't know if that makes sense, but like it obviously doesn't apply to every single movie that I watch. It just applies to some, and I think this is definitely like an example of something that I might see in another movie and think like, ugh, like I don't like the way that we just went from like laughing to being scared. I could have seen that in a different movie and not liked it, but when I saw it in this movie, I did like it. So
I think that I tend to enjoy movies more when they lean more towards either comedy with horror or horror with comedy. Like an example I can think of that you said, Get Out, is really well done. That I feel like that one leans more towards horror, and then it has elements of comedy.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the coin would be like this really stupid movie that was on Netflix that I actually really liked. It was called Zombiever. And that one is just like...
It's straight up comedy, I think. Well, with horror elements.
Yeah, with horror elements, which is like... Yeah, I feel like I understand more what's supposed to be going on, I guess, or what I'm expecting. And it like sticks to, something pretty well, but it like is able to like smoothly interlace the other elements, I guess. I guess maybe I'm just not a fan of
the mix of the two.
Not even the mix, just like maybe it's just the jerky element of it, when it's like trying to balance both. I'm not sure, but there's something about it when it's like so like this that that it like I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. People don't act like this unless they're like fucking robots or something pushing like buttons on the inside. Like funny, scary, cry, horny, this, that, and I'm just like,
I think
I don't
that,
know.
I mean, I see your point of view, and I will raise you. I'm just kidding. But I just always feel like, I mean, obviously I like movies that are very realistic and portray life as it is, and portray like the subtleties of life and the way in which like certain moments are, you know, blah blah blah, you know what I mean? But I also like a movie that will like present to me a reality that I will never experience.
Yeah.
I will never experience it. And I feel like movies like that jerk you around, that manipulate your emotions in a way that isn't so smooth, like give me that. Like they kind of like, you know, scratch that itch for me.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's not a lot of movies that I feel this way about. But this is like one of them where I'm like, this is such a weird movie, but it's just making me feel like, you know, I'm never gonna feel like this in life. Does that make sense? Like, another example, and I think that this is like, it's not a great example, but it's just something that just came to mind. The movie Cry Baby is like, it's a musical. It's definitely supposed to be funny, but it also has like serious moments where, you know, you're meant to believe that the characters are going through a certain situation that is like emotional. It's just kind of all over the place in that sense. Like some things are very serious, some things are not, some things are super campy, some things are, you know, not funny at all, and it's just kind of that like up and down, up and down. And I remember the first time I watched it, like similarly to you, I was like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this? Like, how am I supposed to feel about this? But that's almost what makes them charming, you know? It's not gonna be like fucking Oscar winning, it's not gonna be my favorite movie, but it's like something that I'm watching and I'm like enjoying for what it is, if that makes sense. And I think that's also a movie that is like very hit or miss with people. Like people either usually love it or they hate it because it's so strange. So
I haven't seen it, but I'm interested in seeing it and seeing if I'm also on the same with this and, you know, same field. But I feel like maybe if it wasn't so like set in like a real world setting with those same jerky elements, I might be able to get behind it more. But I feel like because it's like in a real world setting with like a shocking element of like, oh, a demon possession, oh, a werewolf.
I feel like this tells you guys a lot about like the kind of like movie watchers that you and I are and how we differ in that sense, you know?
Yeah, you're more artsy.
I don't think that's what it is. I don't know. I just think I have a appreciation for different things than you do, you know?
Yeah.
So.
I will say that this movie had a lot of symbolism that I didn't really pick up on until I was reading through my notes of the movie. And I wasn't expecting that from this movie at all, being that it was like, you know, cheesy horror comedy teen movie.
Seemed very like surface level.
Yeah, but I will go through a couple of things that I saw. So in the beginning, there was a sort of a foreshadowing kind of that they're inside of Melody Lane, and Megan Fox goes over to get these shots, and the shots were like 9/11 shots or something. They're supposed to be like the Twin Towers or whatever. And shortly after she brings those shots over, the whole place like burns down, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of dark.
Yeah, that's very dark.
There's some more foreshadowing later where I think it's the only scene we get with Needy's mom. There's like the one scene with her, and she's like, she said something like, oh, well, I won't be there, you know, if you're so capable, then I won't be there when you call for me or something. Yeah. And then I think like a few scenes later, Needy comes running in the house and she's like, Mom, where are you, Mom? And I was like, she's not there.
She told you.
She done told you. There is a part towards the end of the movie. Yeah, they're in the abandoned pool, and in like the center of the shot, I feel like it had like the wall part of the pool before, like there's the part where you walk and then there's like the wall and then where the water level was. Spray painted in red, it said hopeless. And I think Megan Fox's character said like, I think at least twice, like, oh, I want you to be hopeless. Not hopeless. She said, I want you to be hopeless. And so, like, that was on the wall. So then, like, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, he's definitely going to go die right there. Very end, when Needy hitchhikes the ride, there's the sign that says low shoulder. Mm-hmm. And that's who she's on her way to go kill. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because that one was, like, very, like, in your face. Yeah. And then there was just one in general that I noticed at the end when they were showing, like, the crime scene photos of the band members that died. Mm-hmm. At least 2 of them had a tattoo of a waning crescent moon. Mm-hmm. And that's what they said they needed for their ritual. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, tonight's perfect because it's a waning moon or whatever. So
yeah. So they kind of tied it back to that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And supposedly, like, the waning crescent moon comes right after a new moon. Mm-hmm. And, like, I don't know, I feel like that's, like, kind of could be seen as, like, symbolism of, like, there's the new moon, and the new moon is when it's, like, all black. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no moon yet.
Yeah.
It's, like, starting over in the cycle, I guess. So it's, like, going from being nothing to, like, getting fame, kind of, like, growing. So, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. That's also interesting, too, in the sense, I mean, I'm sure it's connected that, like, I think, like, women are supposed to be connected to the moon and the tides and all that jazz. So, I mean, obviously they required a woman for their ritual, so that makes sense. I thought that the special effects were really good.
Oh, yeah.
They were, like, really, really good. Like, better than I was expecting. And, like, I didn't know much about the movie when we started watching it, but I definitely didn't expect, like, the special effects aspect of it and, like, kind of like the gory aspect of it to be so well done. I thought it was done really well. And then the last thing that I liked was the fact that this movie, just by its, like, sheer existence, like, subverts the genre, like the horror genre, in the sense that it is made by women, and even though it wasn't marketed for, like, towards women, it was made for women. So I feel like, you know, especially at that time, the horror genre in general wasn't taken super seriously, and women in horror were taken even less seriously. So the fact that, you know, that Diablo Cody and Karen Kusama were able to make this movie is already in itself, like, you know, a giant accomplishment. And I've heard a lot of discussions over time about, I've heard it apply more to, like, people of color who end up making movies that maybe aren't as successful. Like, people who are, you know, in a minority or at a disadvantage in certain industries should be able to have the luxury, quote unquote, of making movies that don't do as well and still have a career in the industry. Because, like, there are a lot of movies by, like, old white guys or straight white guys that are garbage. Like, please see, like, the later half of Adam Sandler's career. And is he still making movies? Yes, he is. Like, his career is unaffected. He is, like, still on top of the fucking world. Not comedy-wise, but you know what I mean. Like, women should be able to make movies that maybe don't stick the landing and still be able to continue to make movies that are more successful. So I feel like just the fact that this movie exists to me is, like, already pretty meaningful. It's a perfect, no, it's not a perfect movie. It's a cheesy, yes, it's a cheesy movie. But at the end of the day, like, they were able to kind of, like, make, you know, put their stamp on the horror genre, successful or not, like, it's still there, you know. And now, you know, we're reevaluating it in different times, which I think is really cool.
So you just reminded me that this movie, I saw that it has been read as the ritual that happens to Jennifer in the woods is supposed to be representative of sexual assault, and that Jennifer being possessed afterwards is supposed to be representative of like a survivor dealing with trauma.
Yeah.
So I think that it's really cool that the writer and director are able to bring light to this issue and, like, show this type of social commentary in a movie, like, written and directed by women, starring women, and, like, showing their issues through the lens of, like, a horror genre, so you can, like, really, like, get the intensity of it, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're spot on. I feel like even though it wasn't, even now, even though like the movie is kind of being seen in a different light now, and it kind of interpreted in different ways, it's still not a perfect movie by any means. But like you said, it brought forth like maybe like conversations that in 2009 like the general public wasn't ready to have, but nowadays there are a lot, these conversations are in the forefront a lot more, so it just makes more sense to kind of see what they were trying to get at the time and see how it's just a lot easier to discuss, because I feel like obviously these things have been going on forever and the media's always been, at least, back then in 2009, very hush-hush about things like that. So now that people are talking more about it and people are coming forward with their stories, it just, it makes me happy that we're able to sit here and like interpret this movie and in a different way and not just like fucking clown on it because it's so cheesy, So what did you not like about this movie? Because I have a feeling that your list is longer than mine.
Surprisingly, well, I don't know how long your list is, but my list is not very long. I feel like I was having trouble deciphering exactly what was my problem with it. I think that the main issue is, like we already touched on, that it is the dialogue to me does not seem like it fits exactly, and that it's pretty cringy a lot of the time. And also in a way it's like dated, but it's like, now that I thought maybe just I wasn't aware of like things at that time, but you said that some of it's like kind of like Sims.
Yeah, I think it's like made up.
Because I had a question in here that I was like, did people use salty as beautiful in the late 2000s? And I was like, I don't remember that.
I'm pretty sure she made that up.
Okay.
Yeah, she kind of just made it like a thing that her characters say in that movie, so.
I wonder if that's something that she uses, and she was just like, it's an inside joke, I'm going to throw it in here.
Maybe
I'll catch on with these teenage
teens. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, so I don't know. I think that was like a big part of what like took me out of it.
Yeah.
And like made it hard for me to like get into it.
So there were certain things in the story that I feel like were portrayed to be like more important than they actually turned out to be. So I have a few examples. First one is Jennifer's relationship with the cop or with the cadet or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Like the guy, Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt plays the dude. And they have a little back and forth when they're at the bar that seems like is going to go somewhere later, and then it just kind of doesn't. So I was like, I wonder what that was about. Kind of strange. But that's one thing that I was like, that's weird.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that scene, actually. Like, he didn't even need to be in there. He literally didn't do anything.
I feel like she kind of just put it in there to, like, maybe give us a little insight into, like, Jennifer's character, like, the kind of person that she was, like, the fact that she was hooking up with guys that were older than her, The only thing, that was, like, the only redeeming things that I could find. Maybe she was trying to paint Jennifer in a certain light so that you would kind of understand at the end that she was obviously not a virgin when those guys killed her, so then that's why she got possessed. So that was one of the things that I was like, that's kind of strange. The other thing was the teacher. I feel like the teacher was fucking weird for like no reason. Like he had like a robot arm and he had like burns on his face, and he was just like a strange character that I thought was gonna go somewhere, because I was like, why would you put so much emphasis on just a side character if you weren't going to kind of bring that back in the end? But it didn't really go anywhere. He was just fucking weird for no reason, so I thought that was a little funny. And then lastly, it was just the fact that they kissed and then they just like never talked about it again. That to me has like the potential to be the thing that I liked the least about the movie, because it was like queerbaity. It was just like, let's have a makeout scene. 2 girls make out. Absolutely no discussion before or after about that happening. Like, it was just like a lesbian, like, sex scene for this, not sex, but scene for the sake of having it in there. Or maybe for the sake of, like, putting it in the trailer and having it be, like, provocative or something. Like, it didn't really go anywhere. It was just kind of strange.
I read in that in that BuzzFeed article that I don't remember who said it. I think it was Diablo Cody said it, that they added that part in there because they thought that people weren't going to read between the lines, that there was like more than just like a possessive friendship, that there was supposed to be some sort of like sexual tension.
Yeah.
And so they thought like, oh, okay, we have to have them kiss because nobody's going to read it. Nobody's going to read it that way. They're not going to understand that there was like this tension. But then they didn't, like you said, they didn't
address
follow
it.
up.
Yeah.
If they had done something.
Like, from that point forward, they would have even like discussed like very quickly the fact that they had that kind of relationship, then it would have made a lot more sense. But I feel like if their point was to be more clear about the fact that there was sexual tension and that there was like somewhat of a romantic relationship, then they only did it halfway, you know, and they didn't fulfill what sounds like was their plan to begin with, you know. So that was another thing that I thought was kind of weird. Just like, these are things that are like, when you're watching the movie, you're kind of meant to believe that have more meaning than they actually end up having. Like, all these things just like fizzle out and the movie carries on like none of these things are important, you know?
Yeah.
Which is weird.
There was a minor thing that fits into that I thought in the beginning, Needy, like, she says that the main bad guy, I forgot his name even because he's so stupid. No, not the main bad guy. The leader of the band, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Nikolai. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think. I don't remember.
Adam Brody.
Yeah, that guy. So Needy says, oh yeah, he reminds me of this evil tree when I was a kid. And then they show a flashback of her as a kid, and I was like, man, I wonder if that tree's gonna come back later as something like that's the you know, the source of something evil, or
yeah, like to tie in somehow to the
because like that was a need
throwaway.
Throwaway. Like it was not necessary, that flashback scene with that, or that like inner dialogue, whatever.
So I feel like I get when movies do that in certain situations, because those like kind of throwaway facts could be used to mislead the audience and to make you think like the story's gonna go this way when it's actually gonna go this way. You know what I mean? But I feel like all the things that I mentioned now, and even like the flashback, like you said, none of those things are meant to mislead the audience. They're just confusing. You know, they're not really. None of those things are making me think that there's like a separate plot line that I'm not putting together. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of weird.
Another like kind of big point that I didn't like, that I kind of was debating on whether or not if I should go into it or not, but I decided I will now, even though I erased it off of my list of things. I did not like that, and this is just the thing that happens in a lot of horror movies in general, that the characters, like you said, were like questionable if they were a couple or not, or if they had like some sort of attraction to each other. And then also if they were, which they were supposed to be apparently, that they had such a toxic, terrible relationship. I feel like a lot of the time people in like the queer community are like portrayed as having like terrible toxic relationships, and are like, I don't know, they're shown in like a very poor light, especially in like horror movies, like in the one that we watched with the couple, and then the baby died, and the one mom was trying to donate.
Lyle?
Yeah, Lyle. I feel like that's like another example where it's like, the spouse was like really shitty.
Yeah.
It was a bad relationship.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. I wrote like, side note, I want to see a horror movie with a happy ending where the main character is queer and they get their happy ending.
Yeah.
Which I feel like you don't get a lot of movies where, especially in the horror genre, where there is a happy ending or there is a main character that is queer. So I feel like I want to see that.
I think, first of all, it would have been nice in this movie if it was more obvious that they were supposed to be queer characters, right? Like, if like, there are definitely moments, I mean, and this is, like, probably going to delve into, like, a whole other thing, but I can see why, not that I'm saying that it's a good thing. I can see why they were hesitant to put the fact that they were, like, potentially in a relationship, like, really at the forefront, because it was not as, like,
Accepted back then?
yeah, socially accepted as it is now. But at the same time, I don't know, I see what you mean about, like, kind of like a half-baked, you know, sort of queer love story, like, setting aside the fact that they almost always end badly, or that there's almost always, like, a negative aspect to it, like you said, where it's toxic, or it's just not a good relationship. It would have just been nice if in the first place they were in a relationship, you know, and it wasn't like, are they not?
Yeah.
They held hands, but, like, they didn't talk about it. They kissed, but they didn't talk about it. It's just kind of like, it's very hidden.
Yeah.
In a way that I feel like maybe wouldn't happen now, because, like, it's more socially accepted and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, we still see it in TV shows and places where, you know, where I feel like it's still seen as, like, a taboo, which is so dumb. But, like, I get what you mean. It's just kind of strange.
Yeah.
Kind of like my last dislike is just the fact that I feel like, so, like, we already discussed, this movie is important on its own, whether it's good, it's bad, whatever, right? So I feel like because they were dealing with a different, like, cultural landscape, and the conversation surrounding, like, women's bodies and women's trauma and, like, sexual assault were very, first of all, I was going to say they were different back then, but they weren't happening on the scale that they're happening now, right? So I feel like I really wish that the writer and director would have been, like, a little bit more forward with their message in a way that would have made it more clear to audiences back then. Because now we get it, but now we have the kind of historical context of like, what has been happening recently, and, like, the Me Too movement and everything like that, where these conversations are just at the forefront, you know, like, there's no escaping it. Everybody knows what happens now in regards to, like, the way that women are, you know, abused and stuff like that. So I feel like because there wasn't that context back then, I feel like I wish they would have tried a little bit harder to kind of put that message forward. If that was the message, then, you know, like, really lean on it. Not in a way that's, like, cheesy or, like, overtly done, because then, you know, then you get into, like, more of, like, a pandering type of situation. Or it would have probably done, like, way worse in the box office, because it would have been a topic that people just weren't ready to hear about. But I think that the part where it suffers, at least the way I see it, is that, like, there's a horror and comedy aspect of it, right? Which I already think is, like, pretty well balanced, like, in a way that is jerky, and that is, like, very, like, hot and cold, but it's purposeful. I feel like they dropped, because they were so focused on the horror comedy aspect of it, they dropped the ball on the social commentary aspect of it. So, like, to them, obviously, internally, I'm sure Diablo Cody, as she was writing the script, and Kusama, as she was, like, either, like, reading Diablo Cody's scripts, like, because it meant something to them that was so personal, they probably didn't see that it wasn't as out there. It wasn't as, like, obvious to the viewer. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like maybe balancing the horror comedy, and probably too balancing the fact that they were taking a huge risk, that they weren't sure if the movie was going to do well. They certainly, doesn't sound like they had any help from the studio, since they marketed in the wrong way. Like, I feel like there was too many things in the mix in order for them to really be able to focus on the social commentary aspect of it all. That would have made it more, like, I guess, like, impactful when it came out. Because, you know, those things weren't there. These, like I said, these conversations about women and women's issues weren't there in 2009. Like, it wasn't talked about the way that it is now. So, like, you kind of had to like, I feel like you have to spoon feed it to people a little bit more, and they didn't really do that. So I feel like that's kind of where it fell flat, and that's where I had like the most potential to have a stronger message perhaps, and it kind of just ended up falling flat as like a really quirky, really strange like horror comedy movie that just happened to be about like a cheerleader that turns into a demon, you know. Like I feel like it made it get like a little bit reduced to a movie that's just kind of weird or not good for whatever reason. So I feel like that's like my biggest criticism of it, is that obviously, like, this is coming from me, somebody who watches a lot of movies, but I've never made a feature movie. Like, I don't know what that's like, and I don't have the resources that people have who make movies like this. But I feel like if I had to give that more overarching criticism, would be that I feel like their message, it was there, and like we heard about it in the interview on the BuzzFeed article, like that's what they meant to do, right? But I feel like it was kind of lost in translation a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, in my viewing experience, when she first got into the car with them, I thought, oh, yeah, they're going to take her to the woods or something, and, like, that's going to happen to her.
Yeah.
But then I kind of forgot about it, that's what I thought was going to happen once she started, like, throwing up weird black spiky stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, no, this is different. And then when they went back and explained what actually happened, like, I didn't connect again what I had originally thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
But if I had remembered them, maybe I would have been able to make the connection at that point, and like saw more of like what they were trying to show.
Like what kind of point they were trying to make.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I thought that Needy being in prison was kind of not necessary. Like, they could have just had her at the end leave from Jennifer's house without getting caught, and then catching a ride to go kill the guys.
Yeah.
The whole, like, I'm in prison, I'm levitating, and, like, I'm a badass, and I'm a kicker, I kick people, and I'm crazy. And I was like, this is cringy, I don't like this. Just have her be badass and go kill the people without all the, like...
Yeah.
So there's that, and then also there was a few times where I was kind of bored. Not a lot, just a few times. So those are just, like, minor criticisms, but...
I'll probably put those before what I just said so that we can end on that note.
Yeah.
That's funny. I feel like, I mean, I get the cringe. I get, like... Obviously, there are certain things in movies that, like, are cringy, and I'm like, ugh, that's cringy, I don't like it. But sometimes I like the cringe, you know? I feel like that... I like to lean into it sometimes. Especially when I feel like the movie is leaning into it. Like, it's not cringe for, like... It's not unintentional cringe. It's, like, intentional cringe. And I'm like, I like it.
Yeah, like when we watch Impractical Jokers and it's cringy and we're like, oh no, no, don't do that.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So, Danielle, what did you rate this movie?
So, I gave this movie a 7.6 out of 10 spiky black throw up.
I almost chose that.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. 7.6? Okay. All right. Higher than I thought you were gonna...
I originally had it much lower.
Yeah, I believe you.
Do you want to know what I...
4 or 5?
No, I had it at a 6.2 originally.
Oh, okay, that's not bad. That's still a D.
Yeah.
It's pretty
And I
good.
have it like a C, a mid-C, a C plus almost.
Yeah, I guess so.
I did like a low D, almost an F. But I thought about it more, and I was like, you know, I see what they were trying to do here.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate what they were trying to do.
I think it's the potential, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Paola,
Yes.
what do you rate this movie?
So, I am rating this movie an 8 out of 10 quirky one-liners. I think, like, just like I said already, I went off, you know, like Sis went off about how, like, important this movie is in general for women and the horror genre. Obviously, there's been, like, a ton of really amazing horror movies directed by women since this one came out that are probably, like, way better than this one. But just for the time, I feel like it was an important movie, and I feel like that kind of boosts up the score for me a little bit. So that's going to be it for today's episode. We hope that you guys liked it. If you did, let us know in the comments, and let us know what you think of this movie if you've seen it. If you have any comments or questions or movie suggestions, make sure that you email us at danielleandpaola@gmail.com.
And then you can stay up to date with us on our social media. So we have an Instagram, and our handle is hysterrifiedpodcast. And then we also have a Twitter account, and our handle for that is going to be hysterrifiedpod. And then lastly, if you are listening to us through the Apple Podcast app, go ahead and leave us a review and a rating. We greatly appreciate it.
So yeah, we will see you guys on the next episode. Thanks for listening and watching. Bye.
Bye.